All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 11 of the Green Room podcast. And today I'm accompanied by Edgy V and GG Carma, two lovely ladies that I've previously worked with in the past, and I'm happy to have them on the show. Give us a little introduction to yourselves as people and as your artist personas and whatever else you kind of want to throw in there.
Sure. Do you want to take it away, Gigi?
Yeah, well, I'll speak about myself in terms of the vocalist side of things. So obviously we co-write our songs together. So I'm the vocalist, she's the rapper. Oftentimes I feel like the GG Carma alter ego is a place where I go to kind of self-express myself in a lot of different ways, I suppose. When we operate in society, we have these different personas that lead different lives, you know what I mean? So I feel like GG Carma is the side to me that needs certain expression in terms of things that I need to say about the environment and the world and about myself, and maybe certain injustices, or just, let's just say, very strong feelings that sometimes is not very accepted in society. So it's like a non-judgmental safe space where I go to express myself, and that's kind of what music does for me in terms of the artistry side of things. And also, I suppose the poet in me gets to come out while doing that, you know, just exploring the human experience, and the music and the rhythm and the melody. Yeah. Do you want to go for it there?
I like that. I like how you put that. And then I'm known as Edgy V, the female rapper of the duo Edgy V and GG Carma. And myself, I guess partly it's the same, that, you know, I guess when I go on stage, the Edgy V alter ego is very different to my everyday Edgy V, you know, in reality. And when I go on stage, there's something inside me that sort of switches over, and there's just this like fearlessness that comes out, and I feel like different aspects of me comes out, like Gigi said, it gets to have that expression, and it gets to kind of release those parts of myself that I think everybody can relate with, that there's like parts of ourselves that, you know, we need to kind of let come out in different environments. And I think the stage is such a beautiful place for that to come out, and to feel that freedom of like full expression. And I love hip hop. I love what it represents. I love the aspects of like how we're able to connect with an audience in such a powerful way, with someone that like you mightn't have met until that night, and someone on stage listens to your music in the audience and they're just like, oh my God, I can really connect with that. And sometimes they connect with it in such a different way as well. So like you can see like music has such a powerful interpretation for everybody. So it's like we're all on our own journey, but it's like almost like we're all on our own journeys, but also together. So it's like there's that community of togetherness and separateness in kind of coexisting together. So I love how music has that power to do that for all of us. Yeah.
Where do you think because for me especially, it was a very random kind of moment in my life that kind of set me down the path of music or whatever. I wasn't really known as a musical person. So kind of where do you think you both kind of decided like to actually kind of pursue it, as opposed to maybe just kind of something you were just doing? Like, what was the kind of moment that really kind of led to you going like, actually, you know, I really want to properly pursue this and take it seriously?
Yeah. Do you want to
kick off?
Sure. So I feel like we've always been very like energetic children since we were little, and you know, we've always had like some sort of contribution we were making on, like, whether it was drama, it was dance classes, choir, or whatever the case. And I think the moment that kind of switched over was probably when we got back into music, but that was when we actually got into hip hop in general. So that was like when we were 17 years old, and we lost our father at the age of 17. And it was such a very difficult time at the time to kind of help process the feelings of never having experienced anything so heavy, of like such heavy nature, being so young, and our parents sort of have the nature of protecting us from kind of like the worst aspects of the world and kind of life. And I think it was just one of those things that naturally brought us back into it to kind of find some sort of healing answers and processing of those emotions. And we noticed like how people were really responding to our music, and there was that period where like our music was very, very heavy until it got to the stage where it started to feel less heavy, and we wanted to be less heavy, and we were like, okay, I wanted to contribute in a way that it's more like happy and more entertaining, and we started to kind of take those aspects more into account. And before you know it, we're like doing a gig here and there, and it's all kind of like a domino effect from there on in.
What about you? What do you think, Gigi? How do we Well, yeah, that's definitely a big thing. I think the whole grief aspect of life sometimes unfolds in a lot of different ways, and I think music can help you really unpack the certain emotions that are kind of lingering in the depths of your soul, and sometimes that can be hard to even say out loud to another human being. But I think when you're with yourself and at like a white piece of paper in front of you, all of a sudden you're like, Jesus, this whole white piece of paper is covered in black, you know, in black like letters and sentences and feelings. So sometimes I think of it as like a metaphor as well, like that, you know, that it's like the blackness you suck out of yourself and put on the sheet of paper sometimes. But obviously over time you start healing, so there's not so much dark left over, and then there's like this lightness that starts to emerge, and like the more kind of inspiring parts of yourself. And I suppose because we are going through the human experience, like everyone goes through similar things. And when people and artists speak about certain, you know, things about themselves in their artistry or like music or poetry or even contemporary dance, like that's still a form of self-expression where people still get to sort of embody the things that they went through, you know. And that's why we're like, that connection that we all have to each other, it can be something that comes out very well, I think, in terms of music. And I think now, especially with COVID and everything, there was such a like this connection that kind of occurred over time. But then the music is the thing that people kept like connecting to each other, you know. But we definitely had a lot of fun in the past, like when gigs were still like, I know the gigs are going back on now, but we haven't really performed in a while, and that's actually one of the aspects I miss a lot, because when we were, you know, doing live gigs and sets and all, and doing support for different acts and things like that, we were connecting with so many different people and getting to hear their stories and the way that they were resonating with our stories. It was such a interesting thing. Like it was very inspiring for us, because it just kept like the journey going constantly. Like it was just this like snowball effect, like Edgy V mentioned there. So I think it definitely changed us as people, where it just made us take it more seriously in terms of the weight that the music can carry, really, and the effect that it can have on others. So I think you like no artist should ever take that lightly, and you should treat it kind of with more integrity when you're putting music out there, you know. So,
and I suppose when people kept asking us to appear on gigs, we just couldn't say no.
No, because gigs are great crack. Do you remember when those were like, Connor?
Seriously, there are opportunities to be taken up, because more often than not, there's plenty of artists out there that aren't getting asked to do gigs or don't have the means to put them on. So I think unless you're at a serious level and people are just offering you exposure to perform at their club, you know, or not offering you kind of a good deal, then it shouldn't be something you turn down. What I was going to ask you next was, like, you're definitely a very unique kind of act, like you're twin girls from Lithuania in probably what would be a predominantly male Irish hip hop scene. So I was kind of thinking, like, how has your experience been in kind of that circle overall? Like, has it been a positive one or a negative one, or like, you know, how have you kind of fit into that like jigsaw, if that makes any sense?
That's actually a very I suppose shining light kind of question, isn't it? Thanks for that, Connor. Do you want to jump on that, Gigi? Or
okay, so I think we've had good and bad experiences, especially coming to, you know, promoters, sound engineers, other artists, dealing with the male, let's say, species. Is that even a thing to say? But you definitely come across a lot of different people. I feel like the 21st century has changed a lot of the mindsets for people, and has evolved us to a certain level to kind of learn the mutual respect between artists, and it's being more kind of becoming more apparent, and because of the certain light that's being shed on the certain issues that women have to go through, in terms of like sexual harassment and, you know, being not treated as equals, or their knowledge being questioned kind of more often than the males would. You know, like half the time you see like a male walking into the room and he's all confident and he's like, oh yeah, I know what's going on, I know what I'm doing. And half the time, you know, probably they don't. But if a woman did the same, like she'll be questioned to another level. And it's like, we have to be even more prepared before we go in anywhere, because we know that's going to be the level of scrutiny that we'll be exposed to. So it's like, you better know your shit, because people will ask questions. So you better have answers ready for them, you know? So I think it's like fair enough, like we still have to focus on the artist side of things. So I think the level of performance that you bring to the table, I think that speaks for itself, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, if people get to see you live and they're like, whoa, like they've got great stage presence, you know, they've certain fitness level to be able to maintain, you know, the set with great energy and momentum throughout the entire process. So there's kind of like different layers to peel back in that sense, where actually, like, I've seen great performers before where I was like, oh, this female, I don't even care that she's female, but I'm like, wow, she's really professional. And that's kind of how I usually address the entire act and the artist. Whereas other people would be like, oh, you know, maybe she's good for a female rapper. Do you know what I mean? But they wouldn't say, oh, she's good for a rapper. Do you know what I mean?
I find that quite ironic from a lot of like magazines that are meant to be quite progressive, like still isolate the female in like award ceremonies and all that sort of stuff. Like, whereas like, say myself, I'm like, just put everyone together, like, and stop saying like, oh, she's the best female rapper. It's like, no, like, you know, she's actually like better than these guys and whatever. Like, I mean, overall, yeah, it's still a predominantly male genre, so there, in my opinion, are fewer women at the very top 20 than men, but that's not just down to the fact that they're women, it's just how it is, like. Yeah. But yeah, no, as I said, like, it's kind of strange that a lot of the more progressive media sources still put them in that box. It's like, just completely remove that and just have every single person between the ages of whatever to whatever age, height, size, color, gender, and into one. And do it fairly, like, because it is at a level now where it's not going to be a case of you're just putting them there for the sake of, you know, looking progressive. Actually just do it correctly and the right way, and there won't be that kind of issue anymore. So yeah, I think in that sense, that aspect of things, they really should just, I guess, get with the times, because they're the very kind of sources that might complain about these issues, but they're not exactly helping it by severing everyone into various boxes and corners, kind of, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fast-paced kind of industry and world, like the music industry, and you have to look at, like, it's kind of like the internet. Everything's like moving at such a fast pace that adjustments need to be made very quickly, and a lot of people are like focusing on other different areas, and you just get preoccupied, and that's totally okay. It's just, you know, it's kind of understanding that true change takes a little bit of time, and for it to really integrate, and I guess we just need to kind of keep at it and keep going. And you have to remember as well that, like, sometimes that change takes a little bit longer because, well, I mean, if you step up and you're doing pretty well for yourself in kind of the work ethic and the kind of standard that you're bringing to the forefront, that it's going to make people question their own kind of value and how much they're bringing. So sometimes people can be intimidated by, like, how much further you're pushing the envelope above everybody else. So, like, you have to kind of understand that there's, like, you know, there's a lot of egos and there's a lot of power play, and, you know, some people just simply won't like you being at the forefront because it's putting them to shame a little bit, and that's just the truth. It's okay to say that, you know, and I'm saying that, I'm not saying everyone's like that. I'm just saying there's the good and the bad of every industry, and we all know music industry has just as much bad as it does good, you know, and it's such a delicate thing that it's in constant need of balance within ourselves and within the industry, whether it's male or female. So yeah,
there is a positive level of ego. Like, you have to be determined, you have to be trying your best and trying to be the best. For me, like, I'll always see someone that I would consider to be a better rapper or producer on stage, and it motivates me, as opposed to being like, fuck that guy, like, I'm gonna talk shit about him and bring him down, which is something that I've heard shit about myself being said that's just completely untrue crap, like, just simply from people that are intimidated or jealous, like, and I'm not even at the level that I'd like to be at in terms of being, you know, the one of the best. But I find that, yeah, it's Connor, kind of one or the other, like.
I think, Connor, if people are talking about you, it means you're doing something right, hon.
Oh, no, I don't listen over it. You know, it's something that, I mean, we're all used to, whether in music or not, like, you know, people are going to talk shit regardless of what you're at, like. But yeah, it is kind of like, ego is something that's positive in a sense, and as long as you've got the right, like, level of ego, like, you know, be determined and be willing to push yourself. And, like, as I said, if I see someone that's doing better than me, it's like, oh, I just need to step my game up. Like, I mean, I might think that I'm really good, doing really good, but then I'm seeing someone else, like, but come on, like, he's a few levels ahead of me, like, I could definitely pull up my socks. But sadly, there is those other people that will just literally get venomous and almost act like you've insulted them by just trying to do as best as you can, not getting up on stage to upset other people and outdo other people to the point where they are intimidated or insulted. Like, that's not your attitude at all. You're just trying to make the best of this. And I find as well, like, there's not many people I know that are outward and very open with their negative ego. There's a hidden veil there, like, and there is probably more people than you'd think that are like that present themselves as otherwise. Like, I've seen it, like, you know, I've been in the room where there's only like a couple of people and they're talking, and like their attitude in that room was totally different when that person was on stage and they were speaking to them in person. It was like, you know, come on, you were praising that guy to the last, and now he's a fucking bollocks. Like, it's like, come on, like, you know. So I can imagine that I've been using the same fucking situation. You guys may have been, I don't know, like lots of people that we probably know mutually that are 100% sound have probably had shit talked about them. Like, so it's kind of something that, like, unless they're like, you know, really tarnishing your name, just fucking ignore it. Like, and I assume you guys probably would as well. You know, it's best off just to not pay attention to that crap, like, because it's going to be done regardless of where you're at. Like,
do you know what, the way that I see it usually is like, there's certain people in the industry that I would, like, I think hold in the highest regard and really have a lot of respect for. So like, I think it's about the way that the feedback is delivered. So it's like, if someone gives you some feedback in a very constructive manner and they're like, here, like, there's this area and this area that, you know, you could use a little bit of work, but it's the way they present it to you. Whereas somebody who just like loves to be a hater and, you know, gives destructive criticism, and then of course that's going to do a lot of damage. And it's like, is it serving a purpose? It's really not serving a purpose if it's not coming from the right place. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you're only doing this just to be spiteful or resentful or for whatever other reason. So it's really like, you know, at the end of the day, that's how we better ourselves and that's how we progress. So like, criticism is always going to be relevant because you kind of need to, like, you sort of always stay on edge of where you are. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, you're never really complacent of where you are. You're not really ever comfortable, because if you are comfortable, that means you're not really moving forward, you know? So it's like, you have to question your comfort zone a little bit. And sometimes haters are very helpful to do that, because it will help you change, you know?
But you know what, as well, I think the key word here is, as well as mental health, with the mental health relationship that you have with yourself, especially like as an artist, or whether it's like yourself, Connor, like producing, and you're constantly like dishing out so much, you know, projects like beats and instrumentals, and you're constantly working, like, you know, hustling, like, as they say. And it's like, you have to make sure that you're having a positive relationship with your work, and kind of making sure that you're in a good place, and that you're giving yourself that little time to kind of decompress, and make sure that, you know, you're going out for your little walks, because sometimes, you know how it is, like, whether it's hitting creative blocks or staying at home on your computer on a job producing music all day, it can have its own kind of effect.
My life here.
You know what I mean? So those things will naturally get more to you when you're not in the best place yourself. So it's your job to make sure that you are in the best place, to make sure that you know what kind of to take on board, and say, okay, this is actually valuable feedback, as Gigi said, or this one is just, you know, totally disregard, because you're like, oh, well, it's not really like brought to the table in a kind of respectful manner, and I just don't have to deal with this, because you have that respect for yourself, your mental health, your body, and the relationship you have with your work. And you're like, you want to say this to me in a way that will actually add value. Other than that, I don't have to listen to this, because I know what relationship I have with my work, and I'm okay with that, or what relationship I have with the audience and the people that actually value what I do. So thanks for that.
Who you're trying to serve.
Yeah, thanks for that. Like, thanks but no thanks, and, you know, dedicate your energy on things that matter, you know?
Yeah.
I find sometimes that people are almost nearly more passionate or more likely to say something if it's negative. Like, I'd say the most passionate reviews I've gotten, even online especially, like, were like, you know, there was a lot of work put into like slating something, like, whereas I think it's a bit of an Irish thing as well. Like, it just kind of takes a bit out of people to like actually not feel like they're embarrassing themselves by going, like, pulling you aside and going, hey, like, that was really good, like, I liked that a lot, and I liked this aspect and that aspect, etc., etc. I do find that in a lot of cases, people almost, you know, they'll completely ignore you if you make a lot of stuff that might be considered decent or good or whatever, but then as soon as you slip up, they're going to jump on that and be like, this is shit. And it's like, you know, whatever, like, do you know what I mean? It's like, you could bake 10 cakes and burn one, and the burnt one is going to be the one that people, you know, zoom in on or whatever. And I'm not really sure why that is. You know, I prefer to listen to music I like, and if I do come across stuff that I don't like sometimes, and sometimes I do come across stuff I might consider to be awful. It's like, you really should have gone over that in every aspect and put more work in, or waited before you released a high def video with the song you recorded in the studio when you're struggling with your rhymes or whatever. But, you know, I'm not going to go out of my way to message that person and say, like, you're a fuck up. Like, you know, it's like, it's pointless. Like, it's like, if I really care, I might give constructive criticism, but like, I'm not going to go out of my way to do that to people I don't even know. But like, I'm definitely going to jump on and rejoice way more when someone makes a song that's like, oh, I'm actually going to listen to that. It's like, why waste your energy kind of going down the negative path? Like, when there is, especially in Irish hip hop, a lot of very, very good music out there. I think people outside the circle underestimate how much there is. Like, there's a lot more than just maybe the kind of really successful artists like Versatile or Reggie Snow or Denise Chila. Like, it's not just those. Like, there is a lot out there. Like, I think people might have the wrong idea that it's kind of like, you know, there isn't much there. There's an absolutely huge scene that's blown up in the last couple of years. Rappers from every side of the world and every side of the country. You guys, like, as I said, are a very unique kind of act in that sense. Like, so it's like, there's something there for everyone, for sure, to enjoy. And I really think that it's very interesting to see where the scene is going to be. I've said this before, and I've said it multiple times in this podcast. I genuinely think that the scene is going to be one of the biggest in Europe, at least in a couple of years. Like, besides the UK, I think the Irish scene is going to be the second biggest. Like, going up against America, that's 100-year war there, and one we probably never win because it's so big and it's already established for 30 years. I don't think we're going to be defeating Nas or Jay-Z anytime soon. But I think you can see what I'm saying.
The Irish love hip-hop, don't they? The Irish love hip-hop.
Like American hip-hop.
Not just the Irish hip-hop, then like the worldwide hip-hop, you know, UK and US and all the other countries. So
yeah, I mean, look at the Super Bowl this year. Like, it's just big proof of kind of what you're saying. Like, hip-hop is so back on the scene, rap, all of it. Like, it's all really kind of coming back, and even like old school stuff, like all the like all those rappers like we saw at Super Bowl. It's like, it just goes to show, like, everybody's loving that stuff right now. Let's like make the most of this peak time that hip hop is at right now. So everybody that's in it is like, go for it, you guys, don't hold back.
It's still the genre that gets the most slack, but ironically, it is the most popular, outdoing every other genre. Because realistically, the chart music these days, it's hip hop and pop, and that's about it, really. Like, there's very little in between, in my opinion. Whereas even 10, 20 years ago, it was, say 20 years ago, it was everything. It was very mixed, like rock, even metal and everything. And I feel like it stands the test of time. Like, it's like, not to shit on other genres, I listen to them all and love them all. But hip hop is, you know, the king, like, and people don't like to admit it, but it still gets probably the most slack on the news and the media, and from older people that don't have the appreciation for it. And as well, on the sense that, like, I wouldn't say there's many of them, but there's definitely a couple of rappers and producers that could be put up there with on the genius level, like, you know, on the level that the likes of Michael Jackson or Johnny Cash or any of those artists are held on that pedestal throughout history. Debatably, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not so much as new stuff, but for a period of time there, yeah. But maybe once, like, Nas or DJ Premier or Dr. Dre or whatever, it's 30 years. It's like, you can literally put those guys up there. Now, they might not be the first examples. They're just the first that came off the top of my head, but I'd say there's definitely a couple there. And it's kind of sad to see that it's still held under this kind of magnifying glass. And it is predominantly an American racial thing, do you know what I mean? The way the media portrays rappers and young black males and all that sort of stuff, because it is the predominant face of the artists, I guess. Like, and that's obviously the reason. But even just amongst people that don't have a grasp on that, there still is that kind of stigma towards rappers. And in Ireland, I can imagine it's much the same with people who are not in tune with the scene. It's like, an Irish rapper, what the fuck? It's like, it's actually been around for like 30 years if you go back as far as Scary Era. Like, it's always been there, and it's always been good too. Like, so it's yeah, as I said, it's that was my only point. Like, it's just kind of, despite being so popular and being number one, and that's not, again, to shit on everyone else or any other genres, it's still under the stigma. So if you remove that stigma, like, I'd say it would probably swallow up the entire music scene. Like, I think everyone would just try to be a rapper at that point. Like,
which is why, like, the hip hop scene's got nothing on us, because you're like, everybody's welcome now. I'm only joking.
No, that is true. And I mean, again, it's been the last couple of years, especially like, because when I first got started, it would have been like 2012, 2013 or whatever. And like, I knew no rappers, no producers. And even looking up on YouTube, like there was stuff there, but like there wasn't a whole lot. And it was amazing how, I'd say by the time I moved to Limerick, like 2 years later, like the scene just completely exploded. And obviously part of it was part of it was me not being aware of other rappers and producers besides, say, the likes of Costello, Scary Era, and Junsu, and the ones that were really at the face. But I do think it just kind of became cool to be a rapper and a producer, whereas it was definitely something probably considered to be cringy. I'd say, like, there's a lot of teenagers now, like young lads, not so many young female teenagers, but that'll come with time. But I can guarantee you, like, I wouldn't have come out as a rapper when I was in secondary school, like, because I would have been slaughtered. Like, it's like anyone that I'd heard of that was doing that kind of stuff would have been slaughtered. Whereas now it seems to be like those guys are probably going to be the most popular kids in school, like, as long as they're pulling it off, like, and doing it well. But as well, people often too have the appreciation of, like, you're actually willing to get up and do this, and I wouldn't, because I don't have the balls to do it, I guess. So people will naturally kind of big up people like that. So it's definitely really, really changed very, very quickly. So it's amazing to see where it'll be in a couple of years, where there is really no kind of hopefully there's no discrimination towards anyone. You know, discrimination towards shitty rappers, I guess, is better than discrimination than for people's physical characteristics or racial characteristics or any of that sort of stuff. You know, there's no place for that. And it's still probably there on some level, but I think for the most part, it's not. Like, I mean, I've never really came across anyone that's had issues with other artists based on anything bar their music. So I think there's a little bit of a kind of exaggeration maybe as to how toxic and negative it is amongst people. It's toxic and negative because it's rappers and we're all in the same ball and it's egos and all that stuff. I don't think a lot of it is based on, I don't like him because he's from Clare, or I can't talk to her because she's a woman. You know what I mean? It's just, it's definitely, it happens, but I think you guys can agree for the most part, probably your experiences with people are positive and very kind of supportive, and there's not really any of that kind of negativity outside of course, the points you made before that, which I think kind of would correlate with anything outside of music. Even there are things that women complain about quite often. So I think that kind of stuff, sadly, is still a given, regardless of where you're at, if that makes any sense.
You just have to make sure that, you know, like you said, you're doing your part, and make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that that we're not sort of feeding into that discrimination and try to make people around us, whether it's artists, whether it's female, male artists, or just any team members of any gender, just feel included and feel a part of the process of the entire production stage, you know, whether it's music video, lighting, whatever the case, you know, recording studio, mixing, you know, whatever the case is, like that, you're doing your best to make sure that everybody feels included and they're not sort of judged on their gender and more on their talent and their dedication and level of expertise and skill. That's all we can hope, is that we make our contribution towards that thing kind of fixating and integrating faster than we think.
Yeah, don't feed it any energy and it'll slowly kind of squash itself out. Like, and I think for the most part, at least 95% of the guys and girls I know in the scene would squash that if they encountered it. Like, if someone was saying something or whatever about someone else that just wasn't right, most people would step up and say, like, you know, cut it out, and eventually that'll be removed from the scene entirely. But I mean, as toxic and as negative as the scene might be portrayed on the outside, I think that I have met so many very talented artists over the years, some lifelong friends. You know, obviously I formed a label with a lot of my good mates and stuff like that. Well, I didn't form it originally, but I inherited it, I guess. And, you know, I guess it's kind of easy to forget all the positives that you've gotten from it when there's kind of negative kind of people or situations kind of at the face of what you're doing. And I think you guys could say the same. You've probably met a lot of really nice people, and even outside of just music, friends and people you'll know for a long time that have helped you out, and you'll help out as well, like that. So it is, for the most part, not really a toxic scene. Like, it's only kind of, I guess you'll meet, I guess it's kind of a given that someone is nice and sound, so you're not going to really reward them for it. And so when you come across someone or a group of people that might be particularly negative, it does have a bit more of a grip, because they're probably putting more effort into doing that than someone who's just being naturally decent to you. You know, like, again, this is all walks of life, but music especially, it is known as kind of a cutthroat thing that, you know, everyone's going to be fighting each other and pulling each other's hair to get to where they want to be. But for the most part, it isn't like that. It's just when you do come across that, it might seem like more of an issue because it's not a given that someone is like that. You know, it's kind of,
to be honest, I think
it's their choice.
Like you have to remember as well that every single occupation has its hazards at the end of the day. And I think when you're dealing with the general public, that's always going to have its ups and downs. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. And like, because of our industry, there is such a big turnover, and like, because there's so many different areas of work that people are constant, like there's such a high turnover of staff. Like you have to remember when you're a musician, you cross like probably several venues, several promoters, photographers, videographers, you know, people behind the bar, people who are like, you know, cleaning the venues, like, I don't know, setting up posters, whatever. Any side, like I think people sometimes underestimate how much like different types of people it involves to actually run the music industry. And I think people, what they do often remember is those few people who have been either assholes or those few people who have been really nice. Like, you know, if you've ever met anyone who you really admired and then you're like, oh, but they turned out to be such an asshole, and you're so disappointed because you're like, their work never reflected that side to them, you know what I mean? But that's just like a level of professionalism that sometimes people don't exactly exert confidence in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're gonna be unprofessional, then that's just bad on you. Like that's gonna create a bad reputation on you. If this is how you treat other people, then you know I would take a look at your priorities a little bit. And I think that's where the ego side of things kind of come in as well.
Side,
yeah, because at the end of the day, sometimes people, you know, let their success get to their head, and you know they forget why they're even making music, and they're like, you know, you do have to sometimes assess yourself and be like, why am I even doing this anymore for? Like, is it the money? Is it the success? Like, yeah, all those things are nice, and they're probably gonna fuel your journey in terms of how much you're able to put back into your work, which can turn into so many other beautiful things, which can mean, you know, employment for other people who are working with you and making extra money, who are working with you, and extra exposure, and maybe possible new artists who might be supporting you that are getting an extra platform because of that, you know. So I think people, I think you're always going to meet all kinds of people, generally speaking, in life. And just treat them with kindness and professionality, and I think you'll go places.
I think I really like what Gigi said there, is that you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. It could be that the most unsuspected person that's going to be their word of mouth that will have some sort of impact of you getting that next gig or next project, you know, a part of that next opportunity. And this is what people's like a lot of times like underestimate, is that you can be talked out of rooms from basically people who have met you and they're like, I didn't have a positive experience, or they'll stay quiet and they'll never build you up because they're like, I didn't have a positive experience with you. So you don't realize how much of your behavior is going to impact that outcome. So that's 100%. Something to remember.
So I think work is always very, very important when you come into any room. What do they always say? Be the hardest working person in the room. So
I had that kind of recently enough, because I find it like I'm very straight and blunt talking on social media. So like if a stranger messages me, I might come off blunt or rude to them, which isn't my
You really?
Connor? Maybe with you guys. But you guys are always so kind of happy and bubbly to talk to, so it's kind of like I'll talk the same, match the energy or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, when a complete stranger messages me and they're looking for something off me, like, and I'm just like very straight up, and then I heard like afterward that this person had said like they had a negative experience with me, and I was like, you're a complete stranger and you asked me for things, and I was just like straight up about it, and in no way it was rude. I was like, okay, sorry, I can't really fulfill that thing. And I was like, for me at least, like, I'm probably more on the business side of kind of hip hop in comparison to yourself. So like I'm on my phone a lot more, dealing with people constantly. Like right now, especially with managing the label, it's gigs, my own art. I wouldn't say my own artists, but the artists on the label, myself, my own music, and also lots of in between. So I don't have the time a lot of the time to be like, you know, sending super passionate paragraphs to every last person. Like, after a while, it does get tiring. So I would say like, definitely, because I feel like a lot of people use social media as and they get their impression from that. Like it's like they look at your Facebook or your Instagram and they think that that's that person. Like, and it's like, not really, it's just social media. Like, so it's kind of like, you know, meet those people in person first, because as I said, I've met people that were really sound on social media, but met them in person and they weren't so sound in person, and the other way around, where they might have almost come off rude to me, but they met them in person and they were 100%. So like, it's the same for yourselves, I guess. Like, people will, you know, I really think you should give it kind of a good scan before you kind of step out and say something that's negative about someone, which again, this is all walks of life, but like, you know, I'd only do it if it was like a stern warning, like about someone where it's like, no, this character is like, avoid, don't deal with this person. But like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm not friends with that guy, so I'm going to step in there and say, you know, do not work with this guy, don't fucking do shit. I might throw in this like, okay, I didn't have a good positive experience with him, but like, you know, I'm not going to let that quash your dealings with them. But you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like social media has that effect because I'm quite robotic, I guess, and very business orientated when it comes to like Instagram and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. So it might come off that my only motive is kind of just the business or whatever, and I'm not really approachable, but that's not the case at all. It's just, I prefer the whole personal thing because I think phones are less fun for me now because it's more of a business tool. So even it's like when I'm writing music, I put the phone away and like to write in paper because it's actually an escape from it. Like, we're all kind of constantly stuck on them in some level, and me probably more so, but less of because I want to look at nice funny TikTok videos or whatever the fuck. Like, it's because I'm having to text and constantly organize and all this kind of sort of stuff. So I would say to people just in general, not just in regards to myself, I'm sure other people have the same experience, that, you know, meet someone in person first before you kind of make your judgment, and you might be pleasantly surprised, or at least give them a chance, you know what I mean? Because I've had my own reservations about people at first, but I won't let that completely obliterate any chance of them redeeming themselves. I'm sure you guys probably had the same experience with people.
Oh yeah,
as well.
100%.
And don't worry, Connor, we still think you're cool.
Yeah. You're a cool dude, Connor. No, but honestly, touching on the whole subject of social media, like, I think, so let's face it, right? So because of COVID, like, social media became such a big, like, it was already a big thing on its own terms, right? But because of COVID and because people weren't allowed to really like perform in person or do like full live performances, like they literally had to do either live streams or like, you know, share the music online. And that was predominantly how they were able to leverage social media to create money and monetary, you know, value for themselves during that time. So like, it was definitely a very good thing for people to do, but then there's like the whole dark side of social media as well. Like, at the end of the day, social media is going to be something that is like a highlight reel, especially for artists. It's like a portfolio. You're always going to put the best foot forward and going to showcase all your best work, all your best videos, all your best, you know, graphic design and photography and all this stuff that like presents you in the best light, because that's essentially what you're selling, is the artist that you are, and like how you're going to represent the venue or the promoter or whoever it is that you're working with. So when they see that level of standard online on your social media, they're always going to consider that as well before they even decide to work with you.
Definitely.
But then that whole social media aspect where you, like, I've personally unfollowed so many accounts, just in terms of what message they were representing. So I think it's like people are starting to really, like, I'm going to use the word filter, because obviously social media, so you know, zinc. Yeah. So like they really have started becoming more conscious of how they filter the type of information that's being thrown at them, and like the level of either fakeness, realness, or rawness that people are literally putting out there about themselves. Because at the end of the day, like, if you're going to be selling a product, like, what is it really representing? What is your message? What's your purpose behind it? Like, there's so many things that you need to ask yourself before you put out a product, because do you know what? Like, I want to look back, maybe, I don't know, 10 years from now, whatever, and look back on this moment and be like, this piece of music that I did put out, I was like, I'm really proud of that. Like, I was putting it out at the time, coming from that level of understanding and that like position in my career path. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I'll still be proud of whatever I came out with at that point in time, because at the end of the day, yeah, we are still progressing, we are still changing. Social media is always going to be changing, and I think people are always going to opt in better for in-person interactions anyway. So I think one of the reasons why I'm so happy to go back and start doing gigs and start performing, hopefully this stupid COVID shit is over, as I like to call it, Sharona, and we can just start being, you know, amongst other people again, and just expressing ourselves and, you know, creating those spaces for each other.
And one last thing I'm going to say as well is that I like what Gigi said, is kind of stay authentic to what you're doing, and that know that you're coming from the best place that you can with the intentions that you have with everything that you do. So as long as you have that within yourself, that you know that no matter what people say about you, say, you know, I had my best interest of where my heart was lying at the time, with why I chose to do what I did or how I chose to show up. That felt authentic to me. And if it didn't resonate with someone, that's on them, and you don't have to take that on yourself. You know, stay authentic to you, because at the end of the day, you are the only person that spends the majority of your life, you know what I'm saying, 24/7. You're with you, so you have to live with your decisions. And if you're genuinely happy with every decision you made leading up to this moment, and someone's not happy about it, as long as you are, and you know you came from a good place, some people might not understand it, and just kind of stay just in general, like I feel like be so relentless about your work ethic and your integrity that the people closest to you will know how rooted you are in that when they hear bad shit about you, that they're actually going to question it, that is that really true, because they know how much you are rooted in that place that you are within yourself, that they're going to say, you know what, I don't think that represents the person that I know, and I don't think that this is what you're saying is actually honest. Great because point. So when you're in that place, people will actually question someone's bad word being thrown at your name. So but then, like you said, you know, there's loads of rooms, that conversations are taking place for people who've never met you, who know you, like you said, from online, have their own opinions of their maybe a minute experience of having had interacted with you, and you know, they could be conversations of that taking place that's like beyond us, and we'll never know, and that's okay too. And let's just not weigh ourselves down, and like I said, focus on that we're doing the best that we can from our place, and that's all we can do, really.
Definitely, yeah. No, I agree with all that 100%.
Nice.
It's nearing half 7 now, so
we can wrap it out. Cool.
You want to finish up? Right. I really appreciate you guys having on, I really appreciate having you guys come on. It was a pleasure having you. I'd like to definitely get you for a longer episode at some point down the future, once I get a few of the other names on the list taken off. I hope to keep the podcast going for another good while, at least till I'm sick of it, but I'm enjoying it so far, so I don't think I'll give it up anytime soon. If you guys want to plug anything before we close up, fire away now while you still have time.
Well, all we can say is that we're very happy to be financed by the Arts Council to complete our EP, The Clone Complex Part 1, and we've got a lot of music video projects coming at you guys. We've launched our Edgy V and GG Carma.com, where our hard copies of our EP is going to be available as soon as it's finished, and we have some merch available on there, and we're going to have lyric books available as soon as we have that, our hard copies along with the lyric books. And any gigs, you know, stay updated on our social media, Edgy V or GG Carma, and we're very excited to do more upcoming shows hopefully soon, and share some new tracks as well while we're at it. What about you, Gigi? Anything else to add?
Yeah, I think I'm just so excited to get back out there and start performing again and start interacting with other creatives, because I feel like I've been kind of in my own little bubble and box that I actually want to get out there again and actually have these conversations just like the ones we just had with yourself, Connor. I think it's just that sometimes it can be mind-blowing what your mind can come up with in the moment when you simply ask the question. And honestly, I just want to see what other people have been creating out there. And just like what sort of impact did they want to make, you know? And I'm excited to see it, because I'm sure it's going to inspire and create that ripple effect in terms of what we are going to create next. So stay tuned, because we're excited just like you guys are.
Things are on the up again, which is great, you know, for music at least, especially, and people want to do gigs. So I'm hoping it stays on the straight and narrow for the next year, and I'm definitely probably going to meet you at some point at a gig, whether it's my own or one of yours. I do plan to kind of have some up your end of the country, and before we finish, I'll just plug the 2 gigs I'm doing very soon. There's one on the 9th of March, Bad Arts Entertainment in the old 55, just there in Ayr Square. I think it's on Prospect Hill. No tickets for it, just come throw a donation or whatever, and we'll be happy with that. You know, something, you know, 2-3 quid. You can donate 1,000 if you want. And you'll also be entered into a merchandise raffle that evening. And then we have one on the 28th, which will be a good few more of the Bad Arts artists in Oris na Gael on the 28th of March in Galway as well. And there will be some in Cork, some in Kerry, some in Mayo, some in Limerick, some in Dublin, and hopefully some up north between now and the end of summer. And I can imagine that you might see GG and Karma and Edgy V at one of our gigs potentially, or they'll have one of their own gigs at some point. So stay tuned for that as well.
Well, thank you.
We'd love to come over, Connor.
Yeah, we'd love to visit you again, like that time in Limerick. Do you
But it's
remember
practically 3 years later. Then it's like, stay tuned. It's like, don't hold your breath.
Let's not wait that long for our next gig after that.
Oh no, the last time I saw you was your gig in Dublin.
The Clone Complex EP. Yeah, the EP launch.
Fibber McGee's baby.
Yeah, that one. That was nearly 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Great.
yeah, it'll be good to see you again. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on, and we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you for having us.
No hassle.